Former Vice President Mike Pence was asked about his potential 2024 aspirations over the weekend. He declined to commit, saying, quote, "We'll do as our family has always done. We'll reflect and pray and consider where we might next serve." Though Pence's former boss is apparently keeping tabs on him. Shortly after the clip of Pence went viral, former President Donald Trump railed against his VP in a statement, saying in part, actually, what Democrats are saying is that Mike Pence did have the right to change the outcome, and now they want to take that away. Unfortunately, he didn't exercise that power. He could have overturned the election, unquote, exclamation point. Joining us now to discuss is co-founder and co-executive director of Ultraviolet, Shauna Thomas, and White House reporter for Real Clear Politics, Philip Wegman. Welcome to you both.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
And so, Shauna, in Trump's statement, he talks about Mike Pence's responsibilities and authorities as overseeing the certification of the election on January 6th. And at the end of it, he says, Mike should have done what we told him to, which was, quote, overturn the election, unquote. And it seemed like another case of it's just impossible to investigate Donald Trump because he just tells you absolutely every crime that he's trying to commit. What was your reaction in seeing Trump say out loud in writing that his goal was to have Pence overturn the election?
I had a few reactions. I mean, one was, of course, that's what he wanted. This is not shocking or surprising to anyone. It should be, hopefully continuing shocking to be everyone that he can admit to crimes like this. But honestly, I have no idea what Merrick Garland is waiting for. Every day he doesn't act is a day Trump becomes more emboldened, as we're seeing. And the threat to our democracy just keeps growing. I think, unless he and the DOJ act soon, I think, January 6th is essentially a warm-up act.
Well, in a new piece for the Washington Post, correspondent Dan Bowles questions whether the former president is popular enough among Republicans to win the GOP nomination in 2024, should he choose to run. According to the data, only 36% of Republicans are more supportive of Trump than the party. That's down from 54% in November 2020. So, Phil, first of all, I don't think that's true. I think Trump certainly could win the Republican primary. Really, the question is whether he could win the general election again, given that there are people who I think will vote for any Republican other than Donald Trump. But should the party be I guess worried? Well, they are worried that he's going to win and then lose the general. I don't know about the primary. What do you think about that?
Well, it's a fascinating data point there that you see Republicans sort of shifting on the former president, and I would expect that to continue if the GOP has a good November, like they're set to do in the House and perhaps the Senate as well. We could see those numbers move away from Donald Trump as people say, well, Republicans seem to have a moment, and maybe the individual voter who is a conservative is more motivated by sticking it to Biden than returning to the Trump years. But what's interesting about the clips that you just laid out is that here you have an administration that is dealing with inflation that is not getting better. You have an administration that sees that the economic recovery is not entirely equitable. We're barreling towards what seems to be a foreign war. And frankly, the current administration wants to generally ignore what's happening on the southern border. If you're a Republican, all of those things should be opportunities for gratuitous pot shots at the current administration. But instead of laying this at the feet of Biden, the former president wants to return to January 6th. He wants to relitigate that. And you've got to ask yourself, if you're one of these Republicans going into the midterms, do you want Donald Trump to show up in your district to talk about how Republicans are going to hold President Biden accountable? Or do you want Trump to show up and talk about how unfairly he was treated? We saw how that went in Georgia, and there are Republicans today who are still of the opinion that Donald Trump is the reason why they don't control the Senate right now. There are a number of opportunities to win over conservative voters, a number of opportunities for Republicans that it seems that by focusing on January 6th, the former president is just kicking to the curb.
Yeah, Shauna, is Trump's goal simply to humiliate Republicans? It seems as if that's how he operates. They'll say something like, oh, no, Trump wasn't trying to overturn the election. And they'll say, yes, I was. Trump will say, I was trying to overturn the election. We could have overturned the election if they just did what I said. And they'll say, January 6th, yes, all those people should go to jail. And then he'll say, well, no, maybe they should be pardoned. I don't know. It seems like his goal is to force them to embarrass themselves, to shame themselves.
I don't agree. That would require him to think about somebody or something outside himself, which he has never done and will never do. He behaves like a king. It's always about him. It will never be about what's good for the party or bad for the party. He doesn't care, let alone the country. He believes in rules as long as he's the one writing and enforcing them. He believes in a party as long as he's the one leading it. Outside of himself, he literally doesn't care. And what's more shocking to me is that there are people who are so afraid of his popularity that they're not willing to challenge, even though they could have a shot at it. Chris Christie is, I guess, an exception. He is, but I don't get the sense anyone cares. So I think to me, it's a question like, are these people going to get it together and recognize the opportunity they have, or let him take the whole country and the party down with him, as he frankly already has done since he came onto the scene a few years ago.
Yeah, and Phil, to that point, are you sensing any weakness with Trump? Are you sensing Republicans sensing weakness? Are there people who are saying, well, you know what, maybe Balls is right. Maybe I do have. Maybe Trump is beatable in this primary, or no, they just don't want to go anywhere near him because going up against Trump could just cost you your reputation, and you wind up as little Marco the rest of your life.
There are murmurs right now, but we're going to see people actually come out into the forefront and have open conversations about potentially challenging Donald Trump in 2024 after the midterms. I think so long as he doesn't declare his candidacy officially and he continues his will he, won't he routine, you'll have a lot of other Republicans who are going to take a step back, wait and see what happens, and then they're going to move. One of the things that is being discussed right now, though, is, obviously there's the question of populism sans populist candidate like Donald Trump. Could someone like Ron DeSantis argue for some of the policy positions that were popular among the base, but without going too far? There's a bit of an appetite for that within the party right now. But I think that as conservatives and as Republicans take a closer look at Trump, what they will eventually arrive on is they're going to take a closer look at the pandemic, and they're going to say he owns some of these successes, certainly in terms of Operation Warp Speed and the vaccine, but he also owns some of the failures. And regardless of what you or I or anyone else thinks about Anthony Fauci and the COVID task force here in Washington, D.C., the conservative Republican base has already made up their mind. They don't like Fauci. They don't like Birx. They don't like anyone who sort of contributed to the idea that lockdowns were ever a good idea. And so you're going to see conservatives looking closer at the way that Trump handled the pandemic, and they're going to come to a different conclusion, which is not that some of these measures were necessary. Instead, they're going to come to the conclusion, in all likelihood, from what the folks I'm talking to expect. They're going to come to the conclusion that Donald Trump could have done something during the earlier days of the pandemic to lessen some of these mandates, to lessen some of these restrictions, maybe to contain Fauci and Birx, but he didn't. And I think that there's an appetite for that on the right, and that could be potentially a soft underbelly for Donald Trump if we're still talking about the pandemic in 2023 and 2024.
Shauna, are Democrats watching this going, they have to be of two minds. One mind being, yeah, it'd be great if Trump gets the nomination because he's the person most likely to lose to Biden. But then also he could win, and that probably most Democrats feel like that would be the worst thing ever for Trump to be reelected. So, and obviously this was the Hillary Clinton strategy. She wanted her opponent to be Donald Trump because she thought he would be the weakest opponent, and then he beat her. So there's a danger in wanting that outcome. What do you think?
I don't think people want to see Donald Trump as a candidate or anywhere near politics or anywhere near any kind of elected office because of how dangerous he really is and the extent to which he's been able to inspire and encourage people to break the law on his behalf, to be violent on his behalf, to storm the Capitol on his and try and overturn a presidential election. I don't think most people, certainly not ones I work with or talk to, believe that him being anywhere near this process, being anywhere near a government, is a good thing for this country on any level, regardless of his popularity, whether it's waning or not.
Okay. Well, Philip and Shauna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And stick around, we'll have more Rising right after this.